scalable solution to this problem in a mode that we as the country says it's not okay if it works, it's just not acceptable that it fail. And that's the mentality we have to be in, not in 50 years, but unfortunately, because CO2 doesn't go away, that decision is ours. So with that, thanks for listening. I'm happy to answer questions. There are always questions. Yes?
Which presidential candidate understands this and will lead us to it?
Oh, I am apolitical about this. So all I can tell you is that the stated public presidential candidate positions on this are that the two Democratic candidates have stated that they would try to assess cap and trade legislation that would cut emissions by 80% of current levels by 2050. It would get us close to this curve. But there are always escape valves in these legislations, that if it costs too much money, then we'll remove the caps. Well, it's going to cost us way too much money unless we do the R&D to lower the cost of doing this. And so those caps are useful only because it'll be the next president who will have to figure out how to deal with it. Right? On the Republican side, all but one of the presidential Republican candidates have been silent or opposed any caps on carbon. The one exception to that, who had a bill in Congress with Senator Lieberman, happens to be John McCain. And he has pushed through, unsuccessfully authored a bill that would cut carbon emissions by 65%. They make up the numbers. Sounds good. 60 sounds better than 20. I mean, there's no scientific basis to have the real numbers. It's a step in principle in the right direction. But understanding the implications of what those numbers mean to our energy system and what it would take to actually do it is a mismatch between the technology life cycle of 40 years of capital investment and of energy demand and the political cycle, which is get elected in the next 4 and then worry about it when someone else fixes it. I will say one thing, not political, just I think economical. I'll venture out of my expertise. We certainly have a policy now of voluntary cuts, right? So how well has that worked? With all the talk about Kyoto, emissions of carbon dioxide were growing from the 1990 to 1999 by 1.1% per year. And then we really talked about it, and we buckled up our belts, and we showed the world what we could do. And between 2000 and 2006, we tripled it. And now we're at 3.1% per year. So that shows you what voluntary emissions are doing. Look, when something is free, you know what economics tell you. You take 10 of them, right? 10 newspapers for free, not just one. If you don't set a price on something, then there's no way to motivate people. Why would you build a carbon sequestration plant that has no reason to exist other than to take something which is free and put it under the ground if you can't make money off of doing that? Right? So that industry can't happen, if it happens at all, without a price on carbon, directly or indirectly. We're not willing to do that yet. I mean, our nation's real #1 energy policy is 2 words, cheap gas. Right? We still talk about it today. Nothing can happen to change the price of gas that would make it go up. Of course, the best thing for climate would be to make the price of gas go up. Right? Because after all, it's so cheap that even when it goes to $3 a gallon, people still drive as much as they ever did, or more. It was pretty apolitical. Let's go back there, yeah.
I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the effect that global temperature increase might have on the large methane clathorate deposits.
Yeah. Yeah, she asked if I could tell you more about it. I'm one of the number of scientists that is reasonably knowledgeable about the climate models. And so that is a lens through which I view what I'm comfortable as a scientist telling you what we can robustly say. Unlike the people that run the models, who are paid to run models, and that's their stake, the observers of the models see many, many flaws. We can't really predict, you can't predict the local regions of much of anything. And if you get the weather wrong for 3 months over Oklahoma, but get it right over Texas, is that any better than missing it in Texas and getting it right in China? Is it better to get the humidity right in the northern hemisphere or the average temperatures right in the southern hemisphere? All climate models on all runs miss a whole lot of things at levels of error that are much higher than the 1% perturbation in the radiative forcing that a doubling of CO2 would actually incur. So to then take, and furthermore, we don't really know the initial conditions because we don't know the amount of cloud cover that was there at 1900 or 1950 simultaneously everywhere on the Earth. We don't know the temperatures everywhere. We don't know where to start. And so you start with sparse data and you run the model, and then you run it again with different data, and you run it again and again, and you take the average path. So the average paths are the things you hear about, but it's clear the Earth is not on an average path. We're on one path, and no one knows which one. That's where I'm comfortable stopping as a scientist. I can't tell you at what level the CO2 permafrost might run away. It might be 380 where we are now. It might be 550. It might not be till 780. So if a scientist tells you that they will be able to say what is safe, I don't think they can do that. They can tell you what we see, and they can reasonably say that more sounds like it's worse, but we don't know that for sure either because there are negative feedbacks as well as positive ones. And we simply haven't been there as a planet before, so it's very dicey to say what will happen. This is why, I completely accept the fact that some skeptics, quote, say that it won't be very bad at all. It might be better. Oh, they're right. There's some probability that even though for 700,000 years, every time CO2 has gone up and down, so have temperatures, that this time that won't happen. It's just that we only get to do that experiment once, right? So that's the real knowledge that we do have. Yeah?
What type of solar thin film cells you think are more likely to succeed?
There's flux in this industry right now, in the solar thin film cell industry. There are 3 or 4 candidates. Cadmium telluride is one. Copper indium diselenide is another. All of these, of course, 90% of the market is still multicrystalline silicon cells that have been lowered in cost, but are the same technology, basically, with some improvements as what JPL worked on for spacecraft in the 1970s, when JPL was a center of excellence in the nation on flat plate solar arrays, actually, at the time. They cost less now and are made in larger scale. There are several states and regions of and countries, Germany and Japan, that have buy-in tariffs, other incentives. California has an electricity renewable portfolio standard. And so there's a growing market for solar because it's the really only large-scale way to meet those, even though it costs much more than current electricity generation prices. And we're now in a situation where you can sell anything you can make. So we're capacity limited as an industry. So even if you make something like cells that aren't really energy efficient, that really cost more than the next guys, someone still has to buy them to meet their portfolio.